The MOT is due on my car, so that's here in the UK, that's a statutory roadworthiness test. And one of the things that's got to work is the horn. And since I fitted the racing steering wheel, the horn push has obviously been removed, and so I'm going to have to do something to make up a horn push. Now, the first thing I had to do was find out how it works, and it turns out there's one of the plugs that goes into the what do you call it, the watch spiral thing, watch spring, is it clock spring thing. One of the plugs has these connections on it, two grey, whatnot. Now there's two at the end. One is a brown and one is a brown and yellow, and those are the two connections that are used for the horn. Now this is an M Sport, and I did have a load of buttons on the steering wheel, so your mileage may vary if you've got another model, but I'm pretty convinced that it's still the brown and the yellow. So the one thing I do have on the steering wheel is I do have a push for push to talk on my radio. So you can see it just there. So if you have a road car with an aluminium steering wheel, and you might be thinking how this video can help. Well, one thing you could do is you could fit a push to talk button on your steering wheel, although you would have the spiral cable. If you don't want to do that, you can follow the instructions in this video and basically mount a small push button anywhere on the dash with the same wiring, and that will equally do the job. Now the concern I did have was if I use that, so what I'm thinking of doing is if I just swing the camera, you can see it actually connects into the rest of the wiring just there, and I can unplug this, which is this spiral cable that goes through to the steering wheel. So what I'm thinking of doing is getting another connector, wiring that into the plug, and then just simply swapping the plugs over when I need to take it for a test. If I do this, the concern I've got is, am I going to try and shove too much current through the switch? Because the horns draw a lot of current, I think, or a fair amount, you know, amps at least. But it does, I know it goes into a control unit, and I'm pretty certain that the actual horn push is not drawing a great deal of current, because if you look at the size of the connectors here, you couldn't do it. It would cause a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to measure the current when the horn is pushed. This is not a nice thing to do because obviously the horn goes off, but we'll see what happens. So hopefully you can see the display on the multimeter. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, and the other thing is I can't find my proper cables for the, or leads for the multimeter, so I've got a bit of a bodge here, but here we go. So I'm not going to have that on for longer than that. Hopefully you saw that it went up to 57 milliamps. So not a great deal of current, quite honestly. And I'm pretty confident that this push to talk switch will cope with that. So I'll have to work out the push to talk switch pin out. But of course the other thing is I've got to find another connector. So this thing just comes apart. If I just, you can just press a little latch button there. Just get my, like that. So I just need one of these. I don't even know what it's called, but I'll do a search and then I'll get one of those and should be good to go. This is the cable I've bought for the horn push. I'm sorry I've already cut it, but if you can imagine, it was sort of joined like that. So on the packet it's described as a 3.5mm/1/8 to mini XLR adapter cable. and it's a female XLR, mini XLR. So we identified it as a mini XLR thanks to Jez Banks at Race Car Radios for helping me figure that out. So let's try, I've cut it already, as you can see. It actually has a red and a black cable and then the outer sheath, but actually I've already jumped ahead and tested this, but I'll show you what I did. I eventually determined that the connection I needed was from the red wire through to the earth shield. So let's have a look at that in the car. So as you can see, I've unplugged the spiral cable from the steering wheel went into the rest of the wiring. So now I want to plug in that spiral cable into this adapter cable that I've cut. So we just plug that in like that. What I've done here is connected the cable to just a couple of probes into my multimeter, and I've set the multimeter to continuity, which just means it'll squeal if it detects a short circuit across here. So you can see that works perfectly okay. It's got a little bit of resistance there. Well, it's going down, so it's probably got about an ohm or something of resistance, but that'll be fine. So the next stage is to splice it into this connector here. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to splice it rather than just cut the wires. I don't know. I'll see how I get on. Actually, splicing it could be a lot more hassle than it's worth. But you can see the basic idea. Now I'll just connect that into the wires here. So I'll connect these into the wires here so that we can then use the push to talk button as the horn button. And then when I don't need the horn, all I have to do is unplug this and plug it back into here like that. And now we're back to using it for the radio. Okay, so as you can see, I ended up cutting the wires into the plug. In fact, I cut another one by mistake. I don't think it matters, but my soldering skills have really gone downhill. I was actually formally trained how to solder, so I should be better than I am, but luckily heat shrink disguises everything. So I've got a couple of bits of heat shrink there, and then I've got this other bit which I'm going to slide over the top and use that to seal it off completely. Although that's looking a bit tight, but I'm sure I'll manage. Well, that piece of heat shrink was too small. It didn't go over the whole of the joint, so I'm going to use some fabric wiring loom tape just over the top bit. But it's time to test it, so let's give it a go. Well, try not to annoy the neighbours too much, but that seems to have worked fine. So, job done.